Hello and welcome to the Deception Tips podcast, where you will learn amazing cues to detect deceit that will help you read people like never before. I'm your host, Spencer Kaufman. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 70 of the Deception Tips podcast. Thank you for listening to this podcast. I encourage you to check out the free Deception Tips blog. Also, take a look at the Deception Tips website at deceptiontips.com. I've got all the videos there. Those are free for you to watch as well. And all of the podcasts are there. In addition, there are transcripts of all of these podcasts and transcripts of all of the videos. Therefore, if you're more of a reader or you need to kind of quickly find something, and you want to do a Command or Control F on the screen to type it out and see where it was and then read about it a little bit or skip to that place in the video or the podcast, check that out because that is made available for free for you guys. In addition, I really hope that by now you have read either the Deception Tips book, the Deception Tips Revised and Expanded book, or a guide to deception. So I hope that you've taken the time to check out those and read them as well. I've also got them available in audio book form as well. If they're not available now, they're coming soon, so stay tuned for that as well. Thanks again. I hope that you're going to take advantage of those additional resources that are available for you to use. Also share it with your friends because you want your friends to know the truth as well. Last time we spoke of a deception tip that was related to speaking. We talked about how when people lie, they are under tremendous amounts of stress and tension. There's a lot of pressure going on there. There's a lot of anxiety. They are on the edge of their seat. Probably literally and figuratively. They are anxious. Therefore, when you become silent, when they're talking to you, when you stop talking, their comfort level is going to go from bad, because they're already uncomfortable, to worse. Now they're going to be very uncomfortable. This is important because now they may continue to speak in order to fill that gap so that they will be convinced that you are believing their lie. Now, we talked about this last week. And we also spoke of it a long time ago, back in episode 13. So if you haven't listened to that, or if you don't remember it, then I encourage you to go back, listen to it, watch the video, read the blog post, whatever you need to do to refresh your memory, so that you will know exactly what we're talking about in that instance. Now today, we've got a different tip, of course. This one we've also talked about several times before. However, today we're going to give you a little bit more detail on it, and we're going to dive into the review of all of the past tips, because you need to keep this information in your mind. You need to constantly be reviewing it, you need to constantly be reminded of it, and you need to always be looking for it when you're speaking and when you're interacting with other people, because it's very, very important. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be listening to this podcast. You know it's important. Therefore, we're going to dive into it here today. Here it is, Deception Tip 70. Symmetrical expressions are associated with telling the truth, as they are usually indicative of spontaneous emotional expressions. Here it is again, Deception Tip 70. Symmetrical expressions are associated with telling the truth, as they are usually indicative of spontaneous emotional expressions. All right, so there were a lot of big words there. Symmetrical expressions, associated, indicative, spontaneous, emotional expressions, a lot of three-syllable words. Now, for a lot of people, that would be too much to handle and it would be very confusing. However, for you guys, I know it's not. But if it is, that's why I've got it in text format, it's in the videos, it's all over the place, so you can see it multiple times in multiple different varieties. You can see it there and understand it. It can be a visual in front of you. So we're going to break it down to make it much easier for you to understand. Real quickly here, symmetrical expressions, that means they happen the same on both sides of the face and body. Okay, they are associated with truthfulness because they mean that something has happened spontaneously. So like on the spot, it's happened, boom, there it is. It's real, it's genuine emotional expression. Now, as I said, we've spoken about this many times before, not about this in particular, but about symmetricality, asymmetricality, and spontaneous or simultaneous gestures and expressions. So we're going to go back to the beginning, and I'll go from front in the beginning up until now on all the times that we've kind of had an episode dedicated in or around this topic. So starting back at episode number 12, we talked of simultaneous gestures. Now that means that gestures should be simultaneous or congruent with the speech. So if you remember, that would be pounding on the table and saying the word at the same time, not one or another, or one after the other. So go ahead and listen to that one again, review it. Then, episode 14, we talked about symmetrical expressions. So that's very similar to today's when we spoke of how symmetrical means truth. Expressions need to be the same on both sides of the face. Then, episode 16, symmetrical gestures. That was how gestures, so bodily gestures, whether it's hand movements, feet, whatever the case, they should be the same on both sides of the body. If you gesture with one hand, you should gesture with the other. Now, you can do them asymmetrically, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about body language gestures, like a shoulder shrug. It should happen on both sides. If it's one-sided, then the person really doesn't know. All right, moving on, episode 19, contempt. This is kind of a sideways one. Contempt is the only asymmetrical expression that is truthful. Otherwise, you must see expressions happen on both sides of the face in order for them to be truthful. Now, if you remember, the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body, and the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body. Now, the brains, they're not two brains, it's one brain, but the sides, the hemispheres, since they're contralaterally related, one is associated more with truth-telling and one is associated more with lies. The left brain is associated more with truth, linguistics, logic, etc. Right side, more creative, associated with lies. Therefore, you would expect to see contempt more on the right side of the face because it is asymmetrical and it is truthful, which means it is more controlled by the left brain, which is on the right side of the face. We talked about that in smiles. We've talked about that elsewhere as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. Review it a little bit if you need to. Then, from there, we jump way up to episode 57 when we talked about asymmetrical expressions, that anything that is asymmetrical, such as a smile on more than one side than the other, that would be more of a false emotion. It's asymmetrical. It's non-spontaneous. That means part of it could have been spontaneous, but then they faked the other part of it in order to even it out. It's false. And from there, we're up here to today, symmetrical and spontaneous. So I'm going to dive into this a lot more, and we're going to go over all of this in a little bit more detail. I may even review some of those other things a little bit more as well. It's all going to be coming up right after this.
How would you like to really know what every body is saying? Understanding body language can help you in your career, your relationships, and in everyday interactions. Subscribe to the Deception Tips email on SpencerKaufman.com today.
Welcome back to Deception Tip episode number 70, where we are talking about symmetrical and spontaneous. What that means is that gestures and facial expressions, they need to be symmetrical. Symmetrical means they're the same on both sides of the body. So whether that's a facial expression happening on both sides or it's a gesture happening on both sides, they need to be symmetrical. They also need to be congruent with the speech that's happening or the other body language that's happening, and, of course, spontaneous. So truthful facial expressions and truthful bodily expressions of emotion are spontaneous. Now, one of the ways you can know
that they are spontaneous is that they are symmetrical. It's pretty simple. And they're also very quick. When we talked about micro expressions, remember that is very, very advanced. Micro expressions are something that not a lot of people are going to be able to see. Why? Because they happen in a fraction of a second, like a fourth of a second, or even faster. Now, micro expressions, they could happen in certain areas of the face. They may not always happen on both sides of the face. However, generally, they're also going to be symmetrical. We talked about micro expressions back in episode 28. So if you're more interested in micro expressions, I encourage you to check out episode 28. In addition, you can view a variety of other resources to help you learn how to see and detect micro expressions. It is a teachable skill, just like learning how to read people and detect deception. So keep that in mind as well. Now, everything must be symmetrical. Symmetrical it's just good. You look at snowflakes, they're symmetrical. You look at things like that, a butterfly, symmetrical. A leaf, symmetrical. Everything that is symmetrical, that is how this world was made. Symmetrical things mean that it is just, that's right, that's the way it is supposed to be. So, when you have a facial expression that is spontaneous, that is genuine, it's true, it is also going to be symmetrical, like a smile. When you see someone smile, you see their lips go up, there are some wrinkles in the lip corners, there's also some wrinkle around the nose, and then also in the corners of the eyes. That should all be symmetrical on both sides of the face. If it's not, then it's generally going to be a false smile. In addition, a real smile is going to be around 4 seconds or less, whereas fake smiles are going to be longer because the person is kind of posing. That's where we get they're a poser because they're faking it. Now, keep in mind, of course, that some people may have Botox, or maybe they have a scar on their face, or they've been hit too many times in their face so their tissue is damaged, whatever that case may be. Those people, obviously, because their face has been damaged, is not going to be perfectly symmetrical. It won't. It can't. Their expressions are going to be asymmetrical because they have that damage on their face. Now, Botox, is it a damage on your face? Well, a lot of people say it enhances my face. It makes it look better. But in terms of physicality and physiological, muscular, neural responses and everything like that, Botox is damaging the face. Why? Because it's short for botulinum toxin, which is a toxin. Toxin is not good. Well, if you put that in your face, it tightens it up, it kills nerves to stretch the skin to make it look better, make it look younger. That's a toxin. It's damaging nerves, damaging things in the face. Sure, it may look better, but it is damaging physiologically. So that means that when the facial expressions occur, their movement might not happen as much. It might not even happen at all. Therefore, that's something to watch out for. And if someone has a scar on their face or something, that's obviously some damage to the cells, to whatever. I'm not saying it's damage to their looks. I'm saying it's damage to the face and the way that the nerves connect with each other and the muscle tissue around them. That's what I mean by damage. Anytime you see that, then there could be some asymmetricality there, even in real, genuine expressions. It's just due to the nature of what's going on in their makeup, their structure. So that, keep that in mind as well, because that's important to watch for. But otherwise, generally, when things are symmetrical, they are true. They need to be symmetrical, congruent on both sides of the body and the face. They should be spontaneous. That means that they're going to be shorter. If they're fake, they're going to last longer. So I encourage you to go through and review any of those episodes that you may not remember. I'm going to recap them real quick. Episode 12 was simultaneous gestures. Episode 14, symmetrical expressions. Episode 16, symmetrical gestures. Episode 19, contempt. Episode 28, micro expressions. Episode 57, asymmetrical expressions. And of course today, episode 70, symmetrical and spontaneous. I encourage you to check them out in the Deception Tips Revised and Expanded book, because there each tip has all of its other related tips announced with it, so you can flip back and forth and recap all of them in a few short paragraphs. I want to thank you for listening to the Deception Tips podcast. I hope that you'll share it with your friends, subscribe to the feed, check out the Deception Tips videos, the blog, and the books that I have available. And as always, tune in next week for a new Deception Tip.